What is going on, YouTube? Working on another custom today, and today we are doing the Dodge Charger 500, the car that Dodge created to dominate NASCAR, but never did. Can't go wrong with the Dodge Charger. So Dodge made this to dominate NASCAR, but once they put it in the wind tunnel, they had all kinds of problems, and this eventually became this. So the 69 Charger actually ran in NASCAR for a couple years, and then they redesigned it into the Dodge Daytona. But this thing's gonna get all NASCAR'd out, which is the plan, and let's take it all apart. I've already drilled out the posts, and let's see what we have to work with here. I'm probably going to do a wheel swap on this. I like the tinted glass. This is actually a brand new release from Hot Wheels. It's kind of interesting. It's got a little few parts on there, and I didn't realize it when I first opened it, but the front end actually has some texture to it. It's kind of cool. Looks like Hot Wheels stepping up their game a little bit. But I think I'm going to make it a heck of a lot cooler. These wheels are probably going to get replaced. They don't spin all that well. So I'm going to look through my treasure trove of wheels and see what we got. So there it is, all taken apart. Let's get this body sanded down, get the citrus strip on there, and see what we can come up with. I think I have a pretty cool idea for the paint scheme on this one. I find that sanding down the clear coat a little bit on these new Hot Wheels helps the citrus strip work a lot quicker. And I'm using some 80 grit sandpaper, which is pretty aggressive, as long as you don't get too crazy with it and know what you're dealing with, like the little details here, and kind of not use too much pressure on the small details. You don't have to worry about scratching them off. I'm just looking for a little light scuff over the entire body of the car. I use 80 grit sandpaper, but you could probably get away with using something different. There we go. That's looking pretty dang good, about where I need it. Let's bust out the citrus strip and get all the paint off this thing. So to get the citrus strip on here, I just go over it with a brush. Obviously not a very good brush. I would highly recommend not using your best paintbrushes to apply the citrus strip to stuff. It's still, apparently it's all natural and safer, but it will probably end up ruining your brushes if you're not careful with it. I've noticed in using the citrus strip on several cars now that it tends to work a little bit better in hotter weather, and if you can put it outside in direct sunlight, it tends to work a little bit faster. Looks like I got a pretty decent coat on there. Now it's just time to let it sit and let the citrus strip do its job. Alright, I think it's time to get this paint off here. This paint was actually proven to be pretty resilient. I let this sit for about 45 minutes and put a second coat on there, and I still had a little bit of trouble getting all that paint off there. I think that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it. Let's go wash this thing up with some hot water and steel wool. Alright, after going over it with some hot water and steel wool, looked like it got all the paint off there, and it's ready for primer. So the paint I want to use on this car is the Dupli-color metal cast paints, but what I found is to get the best look when using these paints, you need to try and get this like a mirror-like finish or make it look like it's chrome. So a couple people do different things. They'll zinc plate it, and that'll fill in all the casting errors and nicks and scratches that are in it. Some people will sand it down and then go over it with a Dremel and get it to like a chrome-like finish. But what I have found that works pretty well and I do it when I use all these Dupli-color metal cast paints. It's kind of a 3-step process. My first step is to go over the entire car with the Krylon Cover Max white primer. It doesn't really matter what primer you use. You can use gray or black. I'm going to be going over this with some metallic paint anyway, but that's just the primer I had at the time. My next step is to go over the car with the Krylon Cover Max aluminum metallic. This stuff is fantastic. I've used it on several builds and it is really shiny, which is exactly what you need to use the Dupli-color metal cast paints, and it's worked really well for me in the past. And my third and final step is to go over the car with the Dupli-color metal cast paints. I really like these paints, and I use a very thin coat and go over it several times, waiting about 10 minutes in between each coat. As you can see here, it looks really good. The paint goes on really easy, and seeing it in the sunlight actually brings out its true color, which is pretty impressive. Now that I have all the paint on there, it is time to put the decals on. I got these decals from RWNEFF1 over on eBay. And any guesses what car I'm making this into? This car is going to be based on a 2001 Dodge driven by none other than Bill Elliott. Bill Elliott raced in 828 NASCAR races over 37 years, equaling 44 wins, 320 top 10s, and 55 poles. Elliott holds the track record for fastest qualifying speed, which he accomplished in 1987 at none other than Talladega. He clocked a 212.809 mile per hour speed, a record that probably will never be matched in NASCAR again. Also in 1987, Elliott clocked in a 210.364 qualifying run at Daytona. In 1985, Elliott made history by winning the first ever Winston Million, a $1 million bonus to any driver that could win 3 out of the 4 crown jewel races, which was the Daytona 500, the Winston 500 at Talladega, the World 600 at Charlotte, and the Southern 500 at Darlington in 1 year. As fate would have it, he ended up winning the Daytona 500, the Winston 500, and the Southern 500 to capture that Winston $1 million prize, earning him the nickname $1 Million Bill. Elliott went on to win 8 more races in 85, bringing his grand total to 11. 85 was definitely Bill Elliott's best year as a NASCAR driver. In 2001, Elliott captured the pole position for the Daytona 500, which was the 50th pole of his career, which has been unmatched by any other driver to this day. And for you NASCAR fans out there that are up to speed on the history of NASCAR, you probably know that the 2001 Daytona 500 is known for something significantly different than Elliott capturing his 50th pole. But that'll be for another video. In 2007, Elliott was inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame, and in 2015, he was inducted into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Quite the impressive NASCAR career, if I do say so myself. Bill Elliott's son, Chase Elliott, is picking up where his old man left off. He's out there making a name for himself on the NASCAR circuit, and it's actually kind of fun to watch. Reminds me of his old man out there. I'd say if you got some time some night, go on YouTube, check out Bill Elliott highlights, and you won't be disappointed. It's about that time to put this thing all back together. So, without further delay, I decided not to paint the interior, as I think the black is actually going to look pretty sweet with this red paint. So I did a wheel swap, put some different wheels on there. I really like these wheels. As far as the Hot Wheels mainline wheels go, I think these are probably the best, and I've used these on a couple of the builds I've made. I'll probably switch it up in some future builds and change the wheels up a little bit. But for now, I think they will look pretty sweet on this one. And as usual, using the 2x56 button head screws to screw it all together. All right. There we go. It's all put together. And now it is time for the moment of truth. Let's see how it all came together. Oh yeah. Check that out. Holy cow. These decals are pretty awesome. I really like that red paint. It goes really well with these decals. I used some Testors Clear to seal it all in. Got my fingerprints all over it. But very, very cool. Really happy with the way this all turned out. That Dupli-color red is very impressive. Cool. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I figured if I was going to be using Dodge sponsorship decals on a car, there was no better car to do it on than the '69 Dodge Charger. It's just a beautiful car to begin with, but I would say it's probably the flagship of the Dodge brand, being all the popularity that it gained as being the General Lee and the Dukes of Hazzard. I couldn't think of any other more deserving car to put these decals on than this one. Even though the Dodge Charger 500 was pretty much a bust in NASCAR, as it was getting blown away by the Fords and the Torino and the Mercury Cyclone, it paved the way for what is arguably probably the greatest NASCAR of all time, which is the Dodge Daytona. So if you look at this car with a stretched out front end and a big old wing in the back, all of a sudden it becomes pretty impressive. So little Dodge history, NASCAR history there. But hope you guys enjoyed the video and enjoyed the little history lesson a little bit, and let me know what you think in the comments down below, and we will see you on the next one.